Okay, let's talk about how we make your app more profitable. And once we analyze how to make profit, that's going to dictate how we're going to go to market with specific marketing tactics. So this is the formula that management consultants use when they evaluate businesses and try to figure out what needs to change so that the company is able to grow and become more profitable. So basically, profit's driven by these three things: the price, the cost, and the quantity. So the formula is price minus cost times quantity sold. Cost, not really a serious consideration, right? The reproduction costs are low. The hosting is often free. It's just not really a major consideration because you're not selling a physical product, or you're not selling a service either that requires a lot of time in a lot of cases, unless you have customer success managers, etc. Maybe there's a service packaged in with your app. So it could be a consideration. But for the most part, you're basically dealing with these two levers, the price and the quantity. So what most people do without necessarily realizing it when they create an app is they decide the price is going to be low. So maybe there's like 99-cent in-app purchases. The app's probably free just to get people in the door. And then there's these really cheap add-ons. So the strategy they're taking is a volume play. The idea is we're going to get a ton of people to download the app, and then at 99 cents or a few dollars for upgrades or monthly subscriptions, they're going to end up having some sort of repeat sales. But overall, the plan is we're going to get tons of customers, tons of users, and monetize a fair percentage of them. But that's not the only strategy you can take. You could also take the angle of increasing the price and saying, okay, we're not going to try to get 1 million people to download the app. Instead, we're going to just jack up the price. Now, typically with small businesses and startups, they're more successful when they go the high price route. And that's why a lot of small businesses tend to be service oriented rather than product oriented, because you don't need a large economies of scale. So typically when you do the large quantity approach, you need large economies of scale in order to become profitable. But I'll explain how you can be profitable in this approach in just a minute. But both of these come with challenges. So the problem with going with a high price is that you're starting to look like a business-to-business SaaS company. And maybe that's what you are. Maybe that's what your app is. It's a SaaS, software as a service. And in cases like that, it's very challenging to get somebody to just buy, to do what we call self-service or self-onboarding and then buy the product. It doesn't just happen. Often you need somebody to even have just one touch or one phone call to solidify the sale. So if you're taking the high price route and you're saying, we're going to get maybe $500 a month from this person or $2,000 a month from a customer, I wouldn't bank on the idea that you can just get them to pay for it. They're probably going to need to talk to a salesperson. And that means you're going to have to hire somebody to do that, or you're going to need to do it yourself. And that fundamentally changes your marketing. Now, the good thing is when you get the price up, it's easier to become profitable. And it also means you can use high customer acquisition cost channels, things like direct response advertising. So what some people are going to tell you with apps is that it's not worth it to do advertising. To some extent, that's true, because a lot of the advertising that you see in the app space is very direct response oriented. It's getting people to install, getting people to buy, that sort of bottom of funnel type of advertising. And that can be very expensive, and you may not be profitable when you acquire customers that way. But that does work when you have a very high priced product. You can even do things like cold calls and stuff when you have a high priced product. Things like account-based marketing start to become profitable because you can justify expensive customer acquisition channels when the price is high. But let's just assume that you're not a high priced app. You're what typically people do, which is approach it with a low price model. Here, the focus is on quantity. So you're trying to get as many people as possible. Now, if you think about what kind of marketing is actually going to work when you need to get a lot of people installing your app and upgrading, it's very different. it's not the standard kind of direct response marketing that you typically see from people in the startup space. The kinds of marketing that works here is things like word of mouth. Word of mouth is probably one of the single most important ways that you can get high volume acquisition that's actually profitable. And one of the easiest ways to drive word of mouth is through key influencers, which I've mentioned previously. So if you're really going for the quantity play, one of the biggest tactical considerations you need to think about is how are we going to generate word of mouth? And that's not going to be through install ads in the App Store. It's going to be through a lot of marketing that doesn't happen on the App Store, but it happens through conversations that influencers have on their YouTube channels or in their communities, their Slack channels, and their Facebook groups, things like that. So just to highlight this point about word of mouth and high volume apps, I did a quick search here for the most successful mobile apps. And what do we have here? So this is 2020 downloads, 2020, 600 million, 540 million, 477 million. So apps that have around 500 million downloads. And what do we have? WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, and Zoom. Now I want you to think about, how did you hear about these apps? Probably wasn't because of an install ad or anything like that. That might have been the last touch that got you to actually activate. But most of these people hear about through word of mouth. They're hearing about it because their friend uses it, or their kid recommended it, or somebody invited me to a Zoom call, so I had to get Zoom on my phone. Like, that's how these things spread cost effectively. That's the way that you're able to be profitable with customer acquisition, is through word of mouth. I'm going to talk about the different drivers, but the most important one to keep in mind is that key influencers are the key to driving word of mouth.